Board meeting of July 28th, 2026. This meeting is called to order at 7 p.m. My name is Nate Andrews. I am the chair of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. For Zoom technical questions, contact planning staff through Zoom chat. I'll begin with a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Chair is present. Scott Riley.
Here.
Jim Brizzolera.
Here.
Brian Curtis.
Here.
Matt Fraser. Absent. Dylan Hornibrook.
Here.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for being here. The following items are on the agenda for tonight's public hearing. First, we have DP 26-02.2, which is a request for pre-app review of a 3-unit development at 7997 Williston Road in the VZD. Next, we have APP 26-02, which is an appeal of the zoning administrator's issuance of a violation regarding the Catamount driving range at 1400 Mountain View Road in the RZD. After that, we will have a staff training, followed by some procedural elections of chair and vice chair. After that, we'll go into deliberative session, come back and make any motions and adjourn. The Development Review Board, DRB, follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, AKA public hearings like court, pursuant to Williston Development Bylaw, WDB, Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as state statute, and expounded upon in staff reports for each public hearing application. As volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance. For any public hearing item tonight, does any member wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest? Does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? Ex parte contact means communicating with or receiving communication from any person in regards to an application on tonight's agenda. Hearing none, we can move right into the public forum. The first order of business, public forum, is for anyone who would like to address the board with a comment or question that is...
I think town meeting TV is muted on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Emily. We're definitely there now. Sure. Good. Nice. All right. First order of business, public forum. This is for anyone who would like to address the board with a comment or a question that is not related to an agenda item tonight. Okay. Hearing none, we are going to move right into our first item in the public hearing, which is DP 26-02.1, 7997 Williston Road, pre-app of a 3-unit development. This hearing is opened at 7:03 p.m. Do we have the applicants here? Please come on up. And please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Matthew Parisi. I'm the owner and builder for this potential project.
My name is Jeff Williston with Catamount Consulting Engineers, civil engineer.
Could you tap the mic? No, bottom base. There you go. Thank you.
There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Just to clarify, Jeff Williston with Catamount Consulting Engineers, the civil engineer for the project.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Matt and Jeff. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request for pre-application review at 7997 Williston Road in the Village Zoning District. The proposal is to create 2 new dwelling units and retain the existing dwelling and commercial office for a total of 3 dwellings. The site is presently developed with the existing primary structure referred to as the Lampman House, containing a 2,000 square foot commercial office and a 1-bedroom dwelling unit plus an accessory detached garage. This is a mixed-use property It has access on a shared private driveway onto State Road, Williston Road, aka Route 2. This was subject to design review, but not subject to Conservation Commission review. Staff recommendation tonight is to take testimony and close the public hearing, deliberate, and approve recommendations. Pre-application is not an approval or a denial, but a list of recommendations that should be reflected in the discretionary permit. The DRB and applicant should carefully consider the recommendations, particularly those about parking space count, parking lot layout and dimensions, and private area. I'll also add driveway width to that one as well. Compliance with these requirements could prevent the project from moving forward to discretionary permit or necessitate revisions to the overall scope. This property has a lengthy history. The Lampman home was constructed in the mid-1800s. Most recently, it had a pre-application review in October of 2025 for a 5-unit development. The scope was reduced to DP 2602.1, what we're reviewing tonight. That hearing was opened on March 24th and continued without testimony through several dates, April 28th, June 9th, and July 14th to this evening, July 28th. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee reviewed this application on March 17th, and their recommendations are included. Interdepartmental comment, the police department did not have comments. Public Works provided a memo dated March 16th. The fire department provided a memo dated September 16th, 2025, an email dated July 24th, and this evening I passed out a memo dated today, July 28th, in regards to the driveway width. The E911 coordinator for addressing was also notified. Typically, addresses are assigned towards the end of a development review at the final plans phase when exact driveway locations and unit counts are known. So they did not provide comment at this time. At the time of mail out on July 24th, there were 8 comment letters plus a video provided. The video is available on the website. Up until this evening, we received an additional comment that Bill Niquette, on behalf of Schwartz and Weedy, wanted to resubmit their memo from October 2025, and that's the second item that I passed out to you this evening. Access and bylaw amendments. So on July 21st, last week, the Select Board adopted a set of amendments to the Unified Development Bylaw, including an amendment to access. These amendments go into full effect 21 days after adoption on August 11th. Therefore, the DRB should provide written recommendations based on these amendments, and we'll get into that in Chapter 13 discussion below. In terms of the design and development standards of Chapter 41, the Village Zoning District, compliance is generally anticipated here with setbacks, both to the front of the street for that existing structure that's not going to change, and the side and rear setback for the residential properties. I do want to note that there is a provision in the Village Zoning District where the existing 3 parking spaces can continue to meet the 10-foot side yard setback, where today a 15-foot setback would be required. There is a provision 41.5.5.1 where existing parking areas and setbacks can remain when there's no reasonable alternative, even in a case of partial redevelopment. And because that 10-foot side yard setback is vested in a prior approval, this would comply with that standard of Chapter 41. The dimensional standards for building height compliance is anticipated. That's measured from existing grade, and that would need to be shown with architectural plans at discretionary permit. The other standards in terms of building footprint and building mass also complies. The 2 new carriage homes will be subject to the standards for new structures and additions. There are no changes proposed to the historic Lampman house nor the detached garage. And compliance is anticipated with the telescoping development pattern standards. So you'll note that those 2 carriage homes are staggered slightly. That was a recommendation from the Historic Committee in the first round of review last October that they carried forward. And the bylaw requirement is that each additional building or mass is staggered in footprint and roof line from the building mass it abuts. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee report goes into greater details about windows and doors, roof designs, material transition, massing, and scale. Those are all elements that will need to be shown at the discretionary permit application with architectural elevations, possibly renderings. Private open area, this is a recommendation that the DRB should discuss and determine if the private area, open area configuration meets the intent and criteria of chapter 41.9. The applicant proposes just under 3,500 square feet, where about 3,300 square feet is required. However, several variables will either increase or decrease that total area. The site plan proposes 5 distinct areas. 41.9.5 of the bylaw does not explicitly prohibit multiple discontiguous areas, but it does refer to, quote, private open area in the singular. And the 5 areas are numbered in this report for clarity. What follows in the report is the pre-application recommendation from October 2025 that the DP must demonstrate that 15% of the half-acre parcel is private or semi-private, et cetera. And then I also quote the standard of 41.9.5 for private open area that defines its parameters in terms of its relationship to the front yard setback, the front facade of a structure, that areas within the setbacks cannot be counted within that calculation, et cetera. So in terms of those 5 areas, number 1 is on the west side of the existing house. And the DRB may require a privacy fence and should discuss if one's necessary to provide privacy from Williston Road. Staff thinks not, and that's basically because of its proximity to the existing home at 38 Slate Barn Drive and some cedars, that it's not like a large open lawn where people in their backyard would be readily visible to passersby. It's a more limited view. Secondly, for Area 1, while pavement is not expressly prohibited in open areas, the DRB should discuss if its removal or a physical barrier to prevent vehicular movement in the open area should be provided. So basically, that private area shouldn't be double counted as parking or stormwater treatment areas. Some of that area might be used for maneuvering in and out of that existing detached garage. Area 2, compliance is anticipated here. This is on the north side of the primary house. It has a little picnic table associated with the office space and existing dwelling. Area 3 is on the southwest carriage home side. So it could increase slightly if you count the sidewalk within that area, which I interpret as being allowed in private open area. But it would be reduced if the bylaw amendment necessitates a 12-foot wide driveway. So that is something that did get moved forward in the bylaw amendment, is a private driveway serving a single dwelling must be 12 feet in width. Here, this driveway is about 10 feet in width. So the driveway would get a little bit wider. That private open area calculation would get a little smaller. Number 4, between the carriage homes, this would also be a place where it might get a little bit smaller based on that driveway going from 10 to 12 feet in width. Area 5 also shares that challenge with that driveway width, as well as the 5-foot by 44-foot strip alongside the 2 parallel parking spaces. And the DRB should discuss if this area meets the intent of use and enjoyment of residents. If not, it should be excluded from the calculation. I'll pause there if there are any questions at this moment.
No?
Just one, Emily, on area 3, can you remind us on the 56 square feet carriage home sidewalks include in the calculation, but reduced if the potential bylaw amendment necessitates 12-foot wide driveway? Is that bylaw amendment done?
Yes, so that bylaw amendment is done. I probably should have tweaked that language in the staff report a little bit. But at discretionary permit, the driveway serving those 2 single-family carriage homes will need to be 12 feet in width.
So this should be recalculated?
It'll have to be recalculated, and adding some for the sidewalk, subtracting some for the driveway. I don't know what that final number will be. That would be up to the applicant as part of that discretionary
Okay,
permit.
but the applicant should be aware that this is a moving target. Okay.
Chapter 41.11, exterior color and prohibited materials. So color guidelines are provided, but they're not regulated in this zoning district. And the discretionary permit would need to demonstrate compliance with the prohibited materials list. So there's a short list of materials that aren't allowed, and the materials that are proposed go through the design review process. 41.12, screening and landscape buffers. So the abutting properties are single and two household dwellings of the same intensity. I do want to note that to the east side is a commercial office building at 8031. However, that is not a direct abutter because of the shared private driveway. So it's the subject property, the neighbor's property with the shared private driveway, and then that commercial office building. So everything that directly abuts this is a single or two household dwelling of similar intensity. And the intent of these standards is not to outright screen 100% or make a development invisible, but to buffer a little bit from the visual nuisances. 41.12, there are front yard landscaping standards. There's a dimensional requirement that's based on the width and depth, and there are some species selection requirements that would need to be shown at discretionary permit. It looks like compliance is anticipated and that square footage dimensional requirement will be able to be met. Parking lot screening to abutting properties. This is not applicable for this property. This standard applies to parking areas with a rank of 4 or more spaces. So right now there's a rank of 3 spaces right up against the building, and then there's the 2 parallel parking spaces and garage spaces. So there's no row of 4 parking spaces that would necessitate any landscaping or fences. I do want to note that the standards of 41.12 are not about headlight glare when vehicles are entering or exiting driveways. It's about when they're pulling in and out of a parking space. There was a fence required as part of DP 20-19. This was a permit several years ago when the dwelling was converted to the commercial real estate office. That plan did require some plantings on the exterior side of the fence that don't appear to be there on the plans or in existence. There is a bit of a conundrum there where that fence and those plantings are outside of the 25-foot easement area that Matt Parisi in the property technically has the rights to do work and maintenance with it. And the parking lot buffering to adjoining ways, the standard's not applicable because that existing building is buffering the parking from the road. Outdoor storage, dining, and work areas. So there is a small outdoor work area where office employees might do computer work or small meetings outside. There's not an established dining area associated with the restaurant use, nor is there any outdoor storage proposed with this plan. There are some requirements about solid waste containers. So depending on the number of trash totes there are, if there's 4 or fewer, the typical residential size trash totes, they can be stored to the side or rear. If there's going to be more trash totes than that, it should be considered to be consolidated to a dumpster with a dumpster enclosure. At discretionary permit, we'll need information about the mechanical, where these utilities will connect to the structure and how they will be visually screened, placed to the rear sides of the building to prevent visual intrusion on the historic property. So that's pretty much everything for Chapter 41 for the Village Zoning District. Also discretionary permit for Chapter 7. We'll need draft declaration covenants, articles of incorporation, and bylaws for the association to demonstrate required private improvements and how they will be maintained. Chapter 11, affordable homes and growth management. The applicant proposes 3 total dwelling units with 1 existing and 2 proposed. Projects with 4 or fewer can proceed directly from pre-application to discretionary permit. So there's no growth management hearing required in March, and they don't need to meet any of the affordability requirements of Chapter 11. Chapter 12, subdivision. So the discretionary permit would need to include a corrective plat. There is some discrepancies in the land records between some of the plats and some of the deeds. At the end of the day, that's more of a private matter that needs to get sorted out. The applicant's responsibility when they file a discretionary permit that they submit complete and accurate information showing property lines, easements, utilities, etc. Chapter 13, access. So this is recommendation 2D, and the DRB should discuss the driveway width with the applicant. This is where the bylaw amendments approved by the select board made some significant changes. So the bylaw requires that a driveway serving mixed use, commercial and residential, be 20 feet in width. And in the village zoning district, the DRB can permit a reduction for adaptive reuse and infill development where special findings are made. And those findings, if made, would take place at discretionary permit. So the staff recommendation is a middle ground, that it would start out at 20 feet wide where it comes off of Williston Road, and then taper down to 16 feet when it enters into the wooded portion of the 25-foot easement. That 16-foot width would allow for the required 4-foot clear zone on either side of the driveway, plus 1 foot of wiggle room. There has been some testimony submitted from the neighbors about the existing maple trees where they are straddle or are near a property line or an easement line, so that 1 foot of wiggle room should help with some of those trees in question along those boundary areas. Also with recommendation 2D at discretionary permit, we would need to see a detailed landscaping plan that's really clear about where those tree trunks are in relationship to the property lines and easement areas. Probably without foliage, probably just a trunk plan. And I include a little diagram that shows the approximate location, not exact, but where it would taper from 20 feet just past the sidewalk down to 16 within that treed area. What follows is a citation of the newly adopted bylaw that goes into full effect on August 11th, and the table included in the bylaw as well. What follows is more discussion about the 25-foot easement that the property has access to. Discretionary permit will also need some information from the Agency of Transportation. Ultimately, this is a curb cut onto a state highway where they have jurisdiction. I'll pause there on access.
You're good? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just checking.
Has there been a resolution on the utility access in and out
For the water.
on the driveway for the water and the sewer?
I believe so. I think you guys did something to update that.
Yeah, two separate utilities there.
Do me a favor, just speak up a little bit if you would.
Yeah, two separate utilities there. So the water services that were originally proposed to be within that easement have been relocated completely on property. So we believe that addresses the Department of Public Works comments about the water service. The sewer service is, I think, still up for some debate. It kind of ties into the corrective plat. In addition to that 25-foot wide access right away, I think there's some conversation about a 10-foot wide sewer easement that essentially hops across both the subject parcel as well as the adjacent parcel that has the right-of-way on it, that actually benefits both properties. We can get into that in a little more detail further, but there's essentially a 10-foot wide sewer easement that starts in the back lot, comes onto the subject parcel for the project tonight, and then back into the subject, the abutting property within that 25-foot right-of-way, and that sewer line collects sewer from both properties and brings it to the right-of-way. So we'll need to take advantage of that sewer easement as part of the project here.
Great, thank you.
Good.
I will note on access, I did forget to mention this, that updated fire department memo is requesting this be treated rather than a private driveway, but as a road with significantly more width and more cleared area than what the bylaw, both in its older state and this newly adopted effective version, would require.
Copy of that memo? I don't think we got that.
You don't want to read it?
It's on the website. July 28th, 2026. I just opened it this afternoon.
Okay,
It's one
they
of
have
the,
a 724, okay.
Emily, while we're on that, could you just quickly go over the difference between, because the fire department memo references plan review standards that were adopted by the town of Williston. So could you please describe the difference between that and the bylaws? Sort of
Yes.
self-explanatory, but let's just touch on that.
yeah, and I'm gonna jump down to recommendation 3. So the fire department plan review standards are a select board policy, not an ordinance with enforcement authority. So they can only be enforced by the development review board to the extent that they align with and do not conflict with the standard of the Williston development bylaw.
Thank you.
So chapter 14, off-street parking and loading. Recommendation 2E is for the DRB's consideration and amendments here. So the bylaw says that the DRB may allow or require the minimum number of spaces necessary for the use and/or feasible for the site to reduce impervious surface and to support the historic village character with customized parking requirements, end quote. There's no minimum or maximum parking requirement for one household dwellings. Therefore, planning staff recommends calculating at 1.5 spaces per dwelling. That's the same as duplexes in the sewer service area. The parking rate for office buildings is 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet, and at least 75% of that is required. So the applicant proposes a total of 9 spaces, 7 of which can be counted, and I'll get into that below. They propose 9 spaces to serve 3 dwellings and a 2,000 square foot commercial office. The office is a real estate office. Of those 7 parking spaces, 2 are within the carriage home garages and cannot be shared by the other dwelling or the office use. Therefore, 5 surface spaces are intended to be shared amongst the real estate office and the 3 dwellings.
Emily, can I just stop you right there and ask?
Yeah.
Are 2 of those spaces stacked in front of the garages of the planned carriage houses?
The 2 parallel spaces?
So, one in the garage, one outside of the garage?
Let me pull up.
Yeah, I think you're talking about tandem parking in front of the garage, and that was not incorporated into the calculations.
That was not incorporated?
It was not,
In this count?
in this count,
Okay,
correct.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so to clarify the parking that we're counting,
Wasn't clear.
there's 3 spaces right behind the historic building. There'll be a space in each of the carriage homes garages. There's 2 parallel parking spaces on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 8, 9 are the 2 in the garage.
All right.
Just while we're on the subject, is tandem parking in front of garage an allowed parking space opportunity?
It can be used,
Yeah,
but it
it-
cannot
yeah.
be counted.
Okay.
My concern would be that if it was counted as a usable parking space for the office, so an office user parking in front of somebody else's garage. Okay, that's the concern.
Yeah, we don't prohibit it, but it can't be counted as part of the parking table. Dimensional standards, so there are size requirements for parallel and 90-degree parking spaces. A portion of the 9 by 22 foot parallel parking space overlaps with the driveway apron of Carriage House 2. The bylaws are amended such that that 10-foot width is now gonna have to be 12 feet, so there might be more of a conflict with those 2 areas overlapping. So the driveway apron and the parallel parking space would need to be reconfigured so there's not that overlap. The other parking spaces comply with the dimensional standards. So the reason that 2 spaces cannot be counted is The distance between the back steps of the Lampman house and the existing detached garage is about 15 feet. And the bylaw requirement is that a two-way access aisle be a minimum 20 feet in width. So that space will be used for two-way traffic. It's very rare that two cars will be going by at the same time, but no less, cars will be going by in both directions. So that aisle width for vehicles to maneuver in and out of that garage is narrower than what a two-way width would be. And then there's other recommendations in 2E about if this meets the safe, efficient access to individual parking standards. In order to get in and out of the existing garage parking spaces, those two parallel parking spaces, very specific maneuvering patterns will need to be used. It's not like a typical parking lot where you can back in or out either direction and be able to go the other way very easily. So there's a lot of tight corner clearances in this parking lot that the DRB and applicant should discuss. Bicycle parking, short and long-term bicycle parking is not required for the residential dwellings. The discretionary permit would need to depict short and long-term bicycle parking. The existing conditions plan does not show the inverted U bicycle rack that is on the DP 2019 site plan. So just making sure that's brought back into compliance for the office space. And the end-of-trip facility for the existing commercial use. End-of-trip facilities, which is a shower and locker room, is not required for residential dwellings. What follows is a parking table that resuscitates those total parking counts, indicating that also ADA parking is in compliance as proposed with one space. On-site infrastructure, so utilities, there are some overhead utilities with meters on the west side of the facade. Municipal sewer and also municipal water, this is where the Public Works Department comments will prevail, and Public Works specifications would need to be met at discretionary permit. I did provide some screenshots of, on the left is the final plans when the duplex was originally developed, showing the sewer force main going up that driveway, and then the existing conditions plan as part of this application where, as Jeff described, it starts on the neighbor's property on the shared driveway, comes into the subject property, and then back on the neighbor's property to the duplex, which also aligns with permit plan AP 21-0140. Municipal water compliance is also anticipated here. The proposed water lines are all, at this time, proposed to be on the subject parcel. At the previous application, I think they began on the abutting property, and they have since been corrected. Chapter 16, maintenance. Compliance is anticipated with private improvements, ensuring that they, those elements in private ownership are maintained in common. Snow removal and storage, recommendation 2G is a decision point for the Development Review Board. The site plan identifies the infiltration basin as the only snow storage area. The DP and applicant should discuss if one snow storage area, approximately 250 square feet, is adequate. On this note, I also refer back to private open area, where that long strip along those two parallel parking spaces will de facto be a snow storage area. And I believe in either written testimony or spoken testimony as part of the prior application, concerns about snow plowing outside of that 25-foot wide easement area onto the abutting properties. So where there's adequate snow storage, that's something the DRB should be discussing. Solid waste, we also talked about that in chapter 41, compliance is anticipated there. Density complies as proposed. There's no density expressed as units per acre in this zoning district. Chapter 23, landscaping, there will need to be a planting schedule. The existing proposed landscaping plans need to depict the tree trunk scale to trunk diameter, just so we can understand what trees might have to be removed as part of that driveway area and where existing landscaping can meet the intent of this chapter. The bylaw in chapter 41 does have provisions for footprint lots and common land. So where a residential or mixed-use subdivision creates footprint or condo ownership, at least 25% of the area between or surrounding the proposed structure shall be landscaped with a type 3 or type 4 informal planting buffer. Street trees compliance is also anticipated here. There's 2 old growth trees in the front yard. Those would need to be retained and protected, and then a plan for their replacement should they need to be removed or fall down over time. Watershed health, chapter 29. There's no wetlands or waterways mapped on this property or anticipated on the parcel. Therefore, only the erosion control standards are applicable. This development, including the driveway, is estimated to disturb about 12,000 to 13,000 square feet. So it's above the quarter-acre threshold. The plan set does show a 2-foot wide shallow grass-lined swale along the north and western sides of the carriage homes. I do want to note that this is pre-app, it's sketch plan. More detailed grading plans and utility plans will be shown at discretionary permit. But at discretionary permit, the applicant would need to identify the total cumulative land area of disturbance and include a completed runoff and erosion control checklist, and ensure that the plans comply with the state of Vermont guidance for low-risk erosion and runoff control. The application must also be designed to minimize erosion and runoff control. So recommendation 2L, that must show how the grading directs all impervious surfaces to the proposed stormwater infiltration basin. I note that that existing driveway that's shared, part of that chapter 13 requirement is that it be paved. So ensuring that its pitch and its grading will direct stormwater to minimize runoff and erosion. Slopes are not applicable, and if the terrain's not applicable, this is pretty much a flat site. Phase construction, compliance is anticipated by completing the checklist. So during construction, revegetate disturbed areas promptly and stabilize areas that will be disturbed for more than 15 days. This is not a large-scale subdivision where multiple phases of construction are anticipated. It'll be close to 1 phase. Recommendation 2L also talks about minimizing porous surfaces. So porous pavement is encouraged, but not outright required. And the site is compact such that site planning does not oversize the road. So they're not proposing a new road, and this also correlates to that adaptive reuse and infill provision to reduce driveway width. A narrower driveway would generate less stormwater and be less impervious surface. Bylaw chapter 29 also has a provision for higher density development, requiring that landscaped areas should, to the extent possible, be used for stormwater management. So they are showing that swale along that north and western sides. And the discretionary permit could also consider other features like underground storage or mechanical treatment. And if those things aren't proposed, providing some sort of quantifiable justification, how the grass swale and infiltration basin would be sufficient. Chapter 24, outdoor lighting. The discretionary permit should include an outdoor lighting plan for the commercial use and parking lot. A lighting plan is not required for single-family homes, but still must meet the standards of Chapter 24. I do want to note that parking lot lighting in the Village Zoning District, building facade lighting is only permitted where adjacent to an entryway. Lighting to accentuate architectural features is prohibited, and parking lot should be limited to pedestrian bollards, so not pole-mounted fixtures, but lower pedestrian scale to reduce light intrusion in the area. Lastly, transportation and Parks and Rec impact fees are paid on a per-unit basis at time of administrative permit. What follows are the list of recommendations. Items in bold are things where the DRB must make a decision. or recommendation 2D about that specific driveway language about what widths they should show at discretionary permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Could you please bring up the parking map that we were looking at earlier? So, yeah, thank you. So Matt and Jeff, could you guys please walk us through just, again, we've sort of done this already, but each parking space and how you kind of visualize circulation, safety of pedestrians, someone's coming out, someone's going in at the same time. Just walk us through what your thought process was like and why you put everything where you did.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, we obviously have a relatively small sized lot at a half an acre with a large existing house and garage and a driveway that accesses on the east side. So there's really limited opportunity to accommodate what we're needing to accommodate here. How we envision the property working is similar to how it functions now, in that those 3 parking spaces directly adjacent to behind the Lampman house would serve as the primary commercial parking for the property. The 2 carriage houses would obviously have their own parking garage and feasibly cars, any other residential component of that, utilizing the driveway in front of them that would be widened to 12 feet. The 2 parallel parking spaces are really there because we couldn't do any type of perpendicular or angled parking because of the 15-foot setback requirement from the property line. But we needed to provide a couple more parking spaces, and that was the best layout that we could come up with. I don't think they'll get, as I understand it in talking to Matt and Blair, who runs the office out of there, there's not a high amount of traffic that comes in and out of this facility on a daily basis, and or is at the property at any single time. So those 2 on the parallel parking are really more like overflow or would theoretically be rarely used. It is a little disappointing to understand that the 2 garage spaces cannot be utilized as part of the parking count, mainly because I think they can be utilized for the residential component of the Lampman house. I think that's essentially how it functions now.
They're currently being used by,
Yeah. We understand the limited width there between the existing garage and existing house. Obviously, there's not much we can do about that. I think historically the property functioned a little differently in that, if I recall, before any of the subdivision was done, there actually used to be an access or curb cut from the garage directly out onto Williston Road there that was essentially reclaimed as part of the development and subdivision of the project. So we're kind of hamstrung now by having to force all the traffic to the east. We do envision, trying to balance the open space requirement that we've got to comply with, the 15%, and reclaiming some of that pavement on the west side of the Lampman house to support that effort. But then at the same time, leaving enough room there so that vehicles can adequately pull in and back out of that garage so that that area can still be functional, at least from a one user at a time standpoint.
There's also an opportunity where those stairs are, because those stairs out of the back of the house are over 5 feet in width, and we're right about 15, so if we took those off, we'd probably hit your 20-foot mark for ability to have the clearance. Those could actually be modified to come out the side of the building there. Have to probably go before the HDAC and so on and so forth regarding that, but that is an option to regain 2 more parking spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
DRB, any questions on parking? Let's just move right into the open space then while we have this image up. If you could please point out again each open space.
Do you want me to go
Could you
over
bring
the-
that-
the staff report
and-
one?
Yeah, Emily did a
With
good
the
job
yellow,
of
yeah.
highlighting. We had hatched out areas on the plan, and it's unfortunately at this scale it's hard to read, but Emily did a good job of highlighting those and numbering them so we can talk about them in detail. With regards to the widening of the 2, and I'm hesitant to call them driveways. I mean, they are accesses into the garage, but they're, maybe 20 to 25 feet in length. Whether those need to be 12 feet, if it's a requirement by the town, they obviously can be widened to do that. But at that 20-foot length, if we have to widen it by 2 feet, that's about 40 square feet that we'd be losing of open area. where I believe, if I understand Emily correctly, we can incorporate those sidewalks into the two carriage houses that were both maybe 56 square feet. That's more or less a trade-off there, so I think that is a potential to still stay in compliance. if I'm
Colin, can we
understanding that.
zoom in on 3, 4, and 5, or who's controlling that?
Yeah,
Emily?
zoom in on that.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt,
No.
I need to see it at the same time.
Something that also I was thinking about here is where we're showing the, for lack of a better word, the basin for runoff, that would only be used during extensive rain events and during the winter time, right, as additional snow loading areas. So in theory, that could also function as private open space. It's not explicitly prohibited. So.
Is that right, Emily?
So
I
what the
thought you said
bylaw
something about
states
that.
is, private or semi-private outdoor space open to the sky for the use and enjoyment of residential occupants. Couple irrelevant sentences. The calculation cannot include land within the side and rear yard setback. The private open area must be in the side or rear of the principal street-facing structure and no closer to the street than the principal structure. Where it's directly adjacent to a street, a privacy fence may be required. So 4195 is vague on that. The DRB's recommendation from October 2025 stated it cannot include lands in the setbacks, parking areas, driveway, or stormwater treatment. So the intent that use and enjoyment, it's dry most of the year, it's not double counted as parking or access areas. That was the board's interpretation at that point in time. There is room for interpretation in 4195.
It's hard to enjoy it when it's full of water.
True, but how much is it gonna be full of water from a percentage standpoint? Total, like,
We
you know,
could get
365.
40 days and 40 nights, who knows?
40 days and 40 nights, all of Williston's gonna be underwater. I hate to break it to you.
You're not breaking it to me. That was the board's decision before. We'll talk about it, but I don't expect it'll change.
What are the dimensions of number 4? The rough dimensions there. What's the distance between the two homes?
10 or 12.
I think it's about, 12 to 15 feet between the two faces of the structure there. For reference, that force main easement's 10, so I think it's about 15 feet.
15?
Yep.
And are we going to be losing, what, 2 feet on each side of it now?
Only where the driveways are.
Right.
And are these homes gonna have eaves that come off of them and shelter some of that space? I mean, a foot or two?
Yeah, usually a foot overhangs on the station.
So number 4 is the biggest solitary open space, is that correct?
Yep.
And it's roughly 15 by 50 or something?
Probably somewhere.
We can,
around
let's go back to the others.
It's about 1,200 square feet.
1,200 square feet, okay,
It's
thanks.
currently shown.
All right, that's helpful.
For what it's worth, on plan sheet C2.0, there's actually
Yep.
a summary of the outdoor space calculations on there.
Thank you. All right, any questions from the board on open space? No. Let's move into talking about the easements. You mentioned you'd like to go into those a little bit more.
I mean, yeah, we have an easement for access, and both sets of attorneys have approved, or basically said the same thing. The sewer easement is also well-known. I'm not sure there's a whole nother separate matter not even related to this development regarding the easement.
Okay.
Let me interrupt. Let me
Yeah.
interrupt and just say that it's not really the board's purview whether you have the easement or not. You either do or you do not. If you don't, you know what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we
So-
have it.
Right.
So-
Okay, thanks, Scott. Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions from the board on any items relating to this pre-app at this time?
I would like to say one final thing if there's no more.
Oh, no, you're gonna have, yeah, you'll have time. We're just, wanna make sure we go through our little punch list and.
Are you comfortable running through each section? Just to make sure you've got it. Just make sure you.
Yeah, let's see here, thank you. If you, why don't you guys go ahead, if there's other things you want to add in right now?
Yeah,
Go for it.
I imagine there's going to be testimony speaking to the use of the driveway, parking and loading. There are times that the driveway and parking lot are quite full at this time. It is our anticipation, a majority of the time, the lot's empty. If we were to put cameras on it, you'd be looking at probably over 90% of the time, which we could do. The lot is completely empty. With that being said, it's our anticipation that once we complete that development in the back, we will most likely move our real estate office out of there, which will significantly reduce traffic flow. So I know there's going to be a lot of discussion around current use and so on and so forth.
But you understand that that is a promise for a future change or decision that's not the case right now.
Sure, you could make it a condition.
No. I'm not gonna make a condition that, requires you to do something with your business. No. So we base it on the situation that we're looking at right now.
Right.
Okay.
Scott, would you mind helping me with that list
Yeah, I
of where
was
you
just
want to
simply,
go?
so I was simply suggesting that, you, or any one of us, it's just we make sure we run through each one and be comfortable that we've covered it all. And if we have, that's fine. Let them finish and then open it up to discussion with,
Okay.
the people
You
here.
want to go into everything, bicycle parking and
No, I don't think so.
landscaping?
Emily, quick question. Was the preliminary landscaping plan C2.1 included in the packet for the DRB tonight?
Yes, it should
Okay.
be.
I just want to make sure that was, I know there was some
Certainly.
back and forth with that at one point. I just want to make sure, we haven't had discussed that much, so I was just making sure it was in there.
Yes.
This is conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is fire department. This is
Yeah.
town standard. They're two
good
different
point.
things.
They're two different,
You know,
so,
and this can't be, if this conflicts with the town, then the town's.
well, I can address that a little bit, yeah, I should mention that again. So, all right, so final question for you, to ask you both to comment on, the minimum driveway width, the fire department memo, which we just got today, the most recent. There was also an earlier fire department memo. Most, if not all, of the things the fire department is asking for are not mandated by the bylaws, and those are things that the board has discretion on. What the fire department is asking for in this memo is a driveway that would kill your project.
Yeah.
Are there, and now the board has discretion, as we heard Emily state earlier, within the power of the bylaws, to use some reason on the actual driveway width here. Are there other things that you saw in that, any of the fire department memos where you have some wiggle room?
Well,
To,
we can maximize our 25-foot right-of-way. So, I mean, as far as that, that's about what we can do within that, if we want to pull up the map or the site plan. So within that, did you have, Emily, you actually had one where you highlighted, I think,
Yeah,
on your
let's
staff
go to that one.
report.
Question is, which page is it on?
It's on 9, I believe.
Yeah, 10.
Maybe a 9 or 10.
10. 10 shows the nice highlighted area of that
There we
18
go.
area. So we can maximize that to the full extent possible. Past that, we don't have any legal way to make that any bigger. However, there is probably a record of this. There was a brush fire in 2020 in the backyard there, and the fire department was able to access that backyard, our backyard, where we're proposing development from Slate Barn Drive.
Okay,
So in case of emergencies, there has been the ability to access it, and the driveway is obviously proposed, but we're proposing will be much wider than it is currently now.
okay,
So,
thank you. Yep.
As far as what I can contribute, unfortunately, I have not got a chance to read the updated memo from the fire chief today. I'm understanding there's maybe some different language than was in the initial memo. I do know that Matt has recently reached out to the fire chief, attempting to set up an on-site meeting to maybe discuss some of this. I personally think that's probably the best way to approach this. There's obviously constraints, tight windows on this property, and limitations to what we can do both on-site and within that easement area. I'd like to think that if we met on-site and, because it's really just a turning maneuver radii issue, I think mainly. The site is very flat, and we're not really proposing a significant increase in the use of the property. So, I think what we would offer is really, between now and the discretionary permit application, a good faith attempt to meet with the fire chief and hash this out with him in the field. Unfortunately, I can't provide much more detail on that now.
No, that's great. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Now, are there any other things, Matt and Jeff, that you would like to add before I open this up to members of the public to comment?
I think the only other thing I'd like to add is I think there's also going to be some maybe testimony or discussion about drainage and drainage runoff on this property, and just want to relay a couple of the existing site features and how I don't think we're going to be significantly impacting them between how the site currently functions and operates now and how it'll function when we're done. This site is obviously very flat. I think across the whole front to back of the lot, there's probably a foot or less of grade in any direction. It does near the back go up a little bit, but it's generally flat. How things drain behind the Lampman house and garage now is they more or less pool in the lawn behind the garage. The driveway that was installed within the right-of-way to the east of our property back when that subdivision was done did increase grade in that area a little bit, and I'm not sure if it contributed to any drainage issues on adjacent properties or not, but it's more or less created a physical berm between our property and the properties to the east. Our site, any improvements on it, at least based on the grading scheme that we've preliminary designed, which admittedly is preliminary, but still not intended to significantly increase grade to a point where we would be directing flow to the east. And so what we've done from a grading and stormwater management standpoint is minimize the amount of material going in there and more or less utilize that existing low-lying area, which is more or less where the proposed infiltration basin is to be located, to at least collect and store and infiltrate smaller runoff events. The soils in this area also are not that great. They don't really have a high infiltration rate associated with them. So, any significant subsurface infiltration technique isn't really going to do much other than store the void space available in the material that we put in, which is why we are proposing that infiltration basin to create a shallow depression in the ground there and potentially put a few feet of either sand or crushed stone in there to provide at least some stormwater runoff that we think would function better than the current site operates now. But we do not anticipate any significant increases in runoff, whether it's the properties to the northeast or even to the west for that matter. And I just want to kind of highlight some of that so you know where we're coming from as how we got to the design as it stands now. Also noting that what we're proposing is, I think it's less than 0.1 acres of new impervious area. We're not talking about a big development here that's going to significantly increase runoff when the sites are already heavy soils as it is. So.
The new buildings also are proposed to have gutters that will obviously direct the water towards the infiltration basins.
Great,
The existing Lambton house also has gutters all the way around.
nice.
The last thing I'll add, so one thing from the fire department memo that's already included in a recommendation is about signage. So recommendation number 2E5 says, the driveway easement area must include directional signage to prohibit parking along the shared private driveway and direct people into the parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Good. Anything else we should add? Okay. You guys good?
More to add?
All right, all right, thank you.
Thanks.
DRB, you're good? All right. In that case, I'd like to open this up to members of the public. Is there anyone in person or on Zoom who would like to address the board? I know we've received many letters of comment. Thank you for all of those letters. We have reviewed them and we will continue to review them in deliberation after. If you sent a letter and you would like to address the board to supplement that letter, please do. Do we have anyone here who would like to speak? Yes. Please come on up, and there's a seat here with a little sign that says public and a microphone. If you could please just say your name and address and address the board with what you'd like us to know.
Is this on? It is, okay. I'm Tim Ross. I live at 7999 Williston Road, so the property behind Ridgeline Realty. Just wanted to mention a few things. And again, as you mentioned, there's a lot of commentary that's been provided by the neighbors and so forth. I think our main concerns are water runoff, for one thing, and snow storage. And the parking, is depicted, the number of spots is tight already. If you get a foot of snow, what's going to happen? I mean, there's not going to be that much room there. So we're thinking about that as well. The overflow into our driveway, that we don't want to have to police that piece of it.
So Tim, you're worried about snow storage?
Snow storage, yes. Certainly public safety and the emergency vehicles is an issue. Increased traffic on the road. I did mention the parking overflow. Turnaround space. I think our concerns are consistent with the other abutting property owners. I think it's fair to say we all want what's in the collective best good, and just don't believe that this project in its current form seems a little oversized for the size of the lot.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So I'll just go back to staff for a minute here, because snow storage is something that, Emily, you spoke about in the report. I did not ask the applicant about it specifically, but could you please review our snow storage minimum calculations, anything else you think is relevant here?
Yeah. So recommendation 2G, the discretionary permit must show solid waste containers in compliance with 16.7 and 41.12.11, and snow storage in compliance with WDB 16.6. The single snow storage area shown is or is not adequate for the proposed use of the development for 16.62. And what 16 says about snow storage, there's not a direct numerical calculation. Is snow removal required? Yes, the owner or owners association is is responsible for the removal of snow from fire lanes, roads, sidewalks, trails, and other required improvements that remain in private ownership. 16.2.2 is a plan for snow storage required? Yes. Proposed snow storage areas adequate for the use of the proposed development must be clearly shown on the plans accompanying an application for discretionary permit. In 16.63, there's limitations, so impact on water quality. Basically, it must drain to an approved stormwater system. You couldn't be pushing snow into a stream buffer or wetland buffer. Section 2, impact on landscaping. It may be stored in landscape areas, but must demonstrate that the plantings comply with the plant materials comply, so that you're using salt tolerant plants if you're going to be pushing it into a landscape area. Snow storage can impact parking areas, but only for the first 48 hours, and it cannot obstruct sidewalks or pedestrian ways. So snow is highly variable. We can get a lot of snow. If you're a skier, that's great. For Public Works, they would like very little snow. So we really don't know how much snow we're going to get in a year or in a single cycle. Sometimes sites with a lot of impervious surface and not a lot of space have to physically remove it from the site. So the intent is that there's some snow storage areas identified where it can be pushed and moved to. That's not going to have an impact on pedestrian ways or water quality. If you're putting it in landscaping, it's going to be a salt tolerant species. But there's not a quantitative requirement for X number of impervious needs, X number of snow storage areas.
Are there areas that snow storage can or cannot overlap with? For example, open space or?
Yeah, that's where chapter 41 is vague. It says use and enjoyment. So in the summertime, a mud puddle, stormwater basin, that might not be fun. In the wintertime, a pile of snow. I don't know. Could that be use and enjoyment?
Could be, yeah.
Emily,
I have before.
Is it or and? Use or enjoyment, or use and enjoyment?
Use and enjoyment.
Thanks, thank you, Emily. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to add, for clarification, on the proposed site plan, I believe we labeled that infiltration basin area as a potential snow storage location. It was not intended at the time to be comprehensive snow storage, outline.
Sure.
I think there's plenty of areas adjacent to the two parallel spots, in between the two carriage house driveways, to the left of the space, the garage. There's plenty of snow storage areas around there, given the limited amount of impervious area out between these buildings. So.
Yeah, I mean, currently, there's actually some of it where that proposed, the proposed basin is, but there's also a lot that's actually put over on the west side boundary, a private open area. I don't remember what the number was, but it's directly in front of the old garage. Not right in front of the garage, but like on that side area. So,
Sure.
And there's, I can anticipate that people will be putting snow between the two driveways in the back. I mean, we all know when there's a big snowstorm, like.
You gotta put it somewhere, yeah. And snow storage is something that'll have to be in the final plan at discretionary permit if we get to that point. And you mentioned gutters.
Yep.
Are those gutters intended are they able to drain into that basin? Is that?
I think it's a possibility.
This is a little outside of the DRB's purview.
Yeah, I mean, we envision there'd be, drop downs and splash pads to dissipate the energy from those gutters, and we've graded the property so that there's actually a drainage swale between the
swale
buildings
would
and
catch
the
it.
back that brings all the runoff to that infiltration basin area.
So it's not really outside of our purview because the staff requires an erosion and runoff control
Right, yeah.
report.
So those gutters do help.
So that's going to be submitted at DP.
Perfect, okay. Is there anything else that you would like to?
Other members of the
Yeah.
public?
Yeah, please come on up.
I'm Dan Oldby, I'm 38 Slip Park.
Hi.
And if you could speak up.
Yeah. So I'll echo the sentiments that my neighbors shared. I think runoff is an issue, public safety is an issue, parking is an issue, as well as open space. But I think you guys are right. Sense of an attachment, with a 30-foot radius, you can't fit a 12-foot driveway in that way. I also wanted to address the brush fire that happened in 2020. It was not accessed from Slate Barn Road. It was accessed in order to get a fire apparatus there. It was on my property. And if you put a fence in between, well, this section here, they ran a fire hose through here, so you're not gonna be able to access it, at least through there. I'll also just mention, as far as snow storage is concerned, currently, the way the parking lot is set up, a lot of snow is pushed out past the garage. I don't have exact measurements, but it gets really close to the property line, and so I will pay attention to that in the future. But yeah, oh, final thing. So all of the water that's being collected off of roofs and everything, it's basically getting diverted into that. What did you call it?
Infiltration basin, yeah, it hasn't really been designed yet, but yeah, some shallows.
Yeah. So there is a swale that it's not steep, but this is a higher elevation, and there is basically a ditch that runs right through here down to the low point here, and that is where my foundation exists, and I have to repoint the foundation in that spot. I've already done it once, and it was done 10 years ago, so it's so if we're gonna be collecting all the water there, and you have a major storm event, and it overruns this infiltration basin, we're basically diverting the back half of that lot's water right to where my foundation is.
Is there swale now there?
It's,
Is there a low point behind your property, between this property and that? Does it go anywhere? Or will it go anywhere?
it goes in my basement.
Goes in your basement, okay. Good, perfect.
So,
But it doesn't drain down the street, or doesn't drain to a manhole or stormwater catch basin, or nothing out the back or anywhere? So it's just a low point?
That's one challenge we have on the site, is there's no subsurface drainage collection system anywhere to be found, so.
so those are all.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out all those very valid concerns. Concerns that you guys have worked on and are addressing. Are there other members of the public that would like to address the board? Online, anybody?
There's 2 attendees online. If you'd like to speak, press the raise hand button or comment in the chat.
Okay, hearing none.
No chats, no raise hands.
Thank you, Emily. Scott? Anything
all
else,
set.
guys? All right,
Yep.
I have one note.
of course, go ahead.
The DRB, by the way, I'm Matt Monche, I'm the planning director. Dylan, I don't know if I've been in the meeting you've been in yet. So
Not yet.
welcome to the board. The tension between the fire department plan review document and the DRB's review process under Williston zoning has been somewhat longstanding, and I think most of the board members are familiar with it. I do want to admonish the applicant and their team that as a driveway that serves a multi-family dwelling, the duplex in the back, this is jurisdictional for the state of Vermont Fire Marshal. The Fire Marshal implements versions of the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA standards. Those standards can be variably implemented. They are done so in Vermont. They are done so in conversation with and on advice of local fire department personnel. So while there may not be a direct regulatory path for the fire department's recommendation to be implemented entirely through Williston's legal authority, it is likely that the width of that driveway and the standard of access that is applied may be an element of your state permit through the fire marshal. I want the applicant and the board to be aware of that dynamic. It's not part of the local approval, it's not part of the conditions of approval here, but it's reality that we find applicants facing, and it's far better to bring it up now at pre-application than as has happened in the past in Williston, standing on site with a CO in the balance. So I'm just warning everybody, pay attention, talk with the local fire personnel, talk with the state fire marshal about this access standard, and highly recommend you do so prior to preparing a discretionary permit application. That's it.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you to the applicant, And thank you to members of the public, neighbors, everyone who came to this hearing. This was a lot of great information, very detailed pre-app review. And with that, I will close it at 8:15 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Next up is APP 26-02 at 1400 Mountain View Drive. This is an appeal of a notice of zoning violation. The applicants, please come up, or the appellants. If you, yeah, pull it on up. If you could please state your names and address for the record.
Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates.
Thank you, Dave.
Good evening, Pete Kelly, 46 McMullen Lane in Williston.
Thank you, Pete.
Alex Corbanis, 223 Brigham Hill Road in Essex, owner of Catamount.
Thank you, Alex. Staff goes next. All right, we've done an appeal yet.
Hang on one second. Mr. Kelly, you want to explain who you are, and what your relationship is to this board?
Thank you, Scott.
Avid golfer.
Avid golfer. No, that doesn't
No,
count.
I'm acting as a consultant for Alex at, for Catamount to help him navigate a number of things, including the notice of zoning violation, but also the transformation of Catamount into the next phase of its journey.
And you are a past member of this board and still an alternate.
I am. Past member, past chair of the DRB, currently an alternate. I would have to recuse myself if
thought it would be a good idea to get it out.
If any circumstances required that in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Pete. Staff has it.
Great, thank you. I'm going to try to give a really brief summary of this so we can get into discussion and questions. This is an appeal of a notice of zoning violation issued to the appellants by the zoning administrator, Deputy Zoning Administrator Emily Heyman in this case. And the violation stems from golf balls from the subject property, a driving range, landing on and damaging homes adjacent to it. Both the townhomes and another single-family home further down have experienced golf balls landing on their property over the years and recently, as well as cracked siding, cracked solar panel, etc. That violation complaint was brought to Williston, to the Planning and Zoning Department through Emily's work as Deputy Zoning Administrator. There was a series of communications and issuance of violation warnings and violation letters as documented by the history in the staff report, culminating in notice of zoning violation second follow-up letter dated June 18th, 2026, issued to Big 3 LLC, the operator of the Catamount driving range. So it's the determination of violation and directives in that letter that are under appeal and under discussion tonight. But as you've seen through the 79-page supplemental materials, there's a lengthy history behind this and some factors to consider. So just wanted to set the stage for where we are in the process and what is under appeal. So the applicants, the appellants, submitted an appeal letter enumerating their arguments against being served with a zoning violation, against the actions that it called for. If you're following along, I'm on page 4 of the PDF of the staff report. So the first was that the violation letter cited a section of Williston's development bylaws, WDB 18.2.2, which pertains to dangerous buildings. The appellants assert that that section of WDB 18.2.2 is not applicable to their situation because the driving range is not a dangerous building, and I'm summarizing here. And I'll talk a little bit about what the DRB might want to do in terms of discussing that in a minute. The other part of the letter directs the appellants to repair the netting that has in the past shielded properties from Harris golf balls. The appellant notes that that netting is no longer on the property under their ownership or control. It is on the property that goes with the townhouses, which was subdivided off of this land under the approval SUD 0705, which is also discussed in the staff report. So, moving on for a moment, the board's received several comments from abutters, letters that included all of that in the staff report. And then most recently, another thing that the violation letter called for was for the appellant to submit to the town some kind of a plan for rectifying the situation. It provided a deadline for them to do that, and that plan was submitted to me by that deadline on July 20th, I believe. What the appellant proposes to cure the violation does not involve repairing the net on the neighboring property, nor does it involve installing any additional net. Rather, it proposes, and I'm going to summarize really briefly and let the appellants go over this when they speak, reorienting the tee boxes to aim balls further away from the homes, prohibiting left-handed golfers from using the tee boxes that most likely result in a slice into those residential properties, and adding some additional monitoring of the use of the facility and staff education such that if somebody is, either by mistake or willfully directing balls off property, they would be spoken to and potentially removed if they were doing that. So paraphrasing a lot there, I'll let the appellants go into details on that. But no new netting in that plan, several management activities, and one structural, one reorientation of the tee boxes. So I want to talk a little bit about what the appellant's appeal based on. So on page 6, first was the application of WB 18.2.2. Normally this would be the section of the bylaw that's used to compel somebody to demolish a building that had been damaged by fire or other calamity and that presented an attractive nuisance or a danger to emergency personnel who were serving that building or responding to it. Probably not, I think we maybe went a couple decimal points too deep into the bylaw with this citation. WDB 18, the chapter that it's in, is the nuisance chapter, nuisance and safety. It's about zoning, regulating properties and uses of land such that they don't create a nuisance or a safety hazard that extends on the property. We use this chapter to deal with construction sites where trash is not being managed and it's blowing off site into someone else's yard or a public right of way. We use this chapter to handle an industrial user that's creating dust, noise, light, vibration, smoke, or something else that's causing a nuisance or a public safety or health impact off-site. So bylaw by this chapter recognizes that sometimes something that happens on one property affects others in a way that goes beyond what it wants to allow. So, the appellant raises the question, is 18.2.2 applicable here? My recommendation to the DRB is that you consider that. Remember, in an appeal, your 3 options are to uphold, overturn, or modify the zoning administrator's violation letter. You could consider a modification to it to cite a different element of that chapter should you find one more applicable. We can talk about that. I did prepare for you a revised finding that just went to the general no off-site nuisances and hazards, no litter provisions, which might be more applicable in dangerous buildings. The next is a conversation about netting. More than I've talked about netting in a lot of years. Back when the netting at Cottonwood was still up, but the driving range was gone, people would often complain to us, when are you going to have him take that netting down? And eventually it came down. But it's really important, and we may need to bounce over and look at the site plan a little bit to understand what's going on here. There's existing netting, it's in disrepair, and it's on what I refer to as the townhouses property. Before the townhomes were constructed on a lot that was subdivided out of the Big 3 LLC property under SUD 0705, going back 2007, 2008, developed in the few years after that. And that was conveyed over with that property to that new entity and that new development. And it's under control of the owners of that property at this point. It's not under the control of Big Three LLC. But there's a depiction of netting in the plans that accompany the approval of SUB 0705. And I use the term depiction very, very loosely. There's a dotted line around the driving range on that subdivision plat that says netting. I looked through the minutes. I looked for a discussion of the netting from when that subdivision was approved. I looked for any specification of the netting I could find. I did the same for the approval record of the golf course itself. It was a dotted line on the plan. It wasn't discussed during the hearing for SUB 0705. Its installation or maintenance was not made a required improvement or subject to a development agreement or posting of escrow or guarantee, which is usually the way the town gets people to do things that they deem necessary for them to do in order to gain a development approval. There's no specification on the plan as to what the netting is supposed to be made out of, how tall it's supposed to be, or anything else. And that line exists on the plans going back to the approval for the golf course. I think it was carried over onto the plans for SUB 0705. If anybody meant to discuss it, they didn't. If they did, it didn't make it into the minutes. It certainly didn't make it into the conditions of approval or become part of the permit record.
But the fact that it's on a site plan is a representation anyways.
So it's a binding representation that there's something on the site plan.
Yeah. Okay.
I get into that a little bit because it's also getting really old, and in some interpretations, maybe a representation that was made over 15 years ago, which is Vermont's statutory limit for all claims on land. And it may mean that if there was ever a hook to get that installed, or if SUB 0705 was meant to be a proposal to install netting, the ability to require it may have passed.
Yep. Okay.
I mentioned in the staff report, the townhomes were built, they were permitted, certificates of compliance, what we now call a CO, were issued for those. That netting or its state of repair or installation of netting offsite was never brought up. So there's going to be some challenges there to focus on that particular solution in this case. I would look at an imposition of a requirement to install netting on this as a new solution to a problem that is happening, rather than trying to enforce an old condition. So I'm not saying don't write a zoning violation that says put netting all around this driving range. I'm saying probably don't lean too hard on the now more than 15-year-old representation on a plan. So the important thing I want folks to understand is the netting drawn on the plan and the netting that ended up on the townhome property are kind of two different things. Maybe they were meant to be the same thing at one time, but they weren't depicted accurately. So that's the conversation about netting. And then I'm down into some recommended findings of fact for the board to consider. Most of these are just about procedural stuff that led us here, discussing the dangerous building section of the bylaw, discussing chapter 18. And then I have, as you often see, conclusions of law with is not choices, and overturns, upholds, modifies choices that you can make in that verbiage. Not to say you can't write your own conclusions from scratch. These are just some suggestions and ways you might think about processing this violation appeal as you consider it tonight. And we don't have conditions of approval because it's not a development application, but we do have separate motions for uphold, or modify, or overturn that are just boilerplate motions for you to consider. So I'm going to stop there. I know I went fast. I'm happy to back up or answer more detailed questions about elements of the appeal or what's happening on the ground, representation of the appellant, or the input we got from neighbors on this, but probably just recommend the board proceed with speaking with the appellant and neighbors on this.
Yep. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Gentlemen, if you could please outline the plan you've put together for us. I think that would be very helpful, and anywhere else you'd like to color in for us.
Very good. Again,
Let me hand this out. Matt, would you like me to give this to you? It's
If
the,
you have something you want to distribute to the board,
it's the,
we'll pass it.
it's the talking points, yeah.
Would you like to give us some time to read this, or would you like to walk us through it?
I can walk you through it.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
very good. Again, Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates. Matt, I didn't know if you could do us the favor of bringing up the site plan. Just want to get everybody the ability to orient themselves with the site so that when we talk about something, hopefully you can catch up and understand better the thoughts of the applicant and the neighbors.
Does this plan work for you to present on? This one that we have up on screen?
Or there are others?
We have more of a civil engineering plan, we have that.
C 1.0 is probably the best one that will show the orientation of the existing conditions and proposed modifications.
Pete, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Is this much different from the 7 steps that you put together to address the issue at hand?
This is an existing.
That's listed in the staff report?
It's
It is a variation on that. It really talks about, it expands upon those things.
gives a little bit more broad view of how we got here, where we want to go, and how the proposed recommendations, as far as modifications for operation on the property, fall into those particular places.
Okay.
So it's a framework to ultimately bring us to the proposed management plan.
Okay.
So up on screen, we have sheet C 1.0 and
Can we zoom in a little?
orienting you in this particular plan. I'm going to actually walk up.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And just speak loudly, I'm deaf.
Okay, I'll put on my big voice. So in this particular case, we've got north, kind of to the right and up on this particular plan, and Mountain View Drive basically occupying the eastern portion of the property. You enter here, this is the main parking lot, and these are the 2 duplex buildings that are one component, Mr. Wasco's home, which is one of the neighbors that has provided commentary to the board. And this is the existing hitting area. It's actually an arc, set up an arc that has 2 levels. And with the original development orientation of the facility, it was set up so that just from a physical standpoint, the centroid of the direction that everybody was instructed to kind of hit their golf balls was more in a southerly direction. And what has happened over time, this particular facility was originally constructed around the turn of the century, 99 and 2000, is that we've seen a continual modification of the neighborhood in regards to incremental development. We have a new neighborhood here that's under construction. We obviously saw as part of the infill along Mountain View Road is the 2 duplexes, and then this, Mr. Wasco's home was constructed in about 2018. So at this point in time, this is the first time that we've had some written requests, and certainly a zoning violation associated with the operation of the facility over those 25 years. So what we always have tried to do is, or at least what I understand the applicant is trying to do, is just work in a positive way, and that's what we want to do here, is actually find solutions, and more importantly, put these solutions on a piece of paper that's enforceable. So anything that ultimately the board does adopt as far as the guidelines or proposals for this particular project is going to be one that ultimately is going to be the litmus test for the success going forward. One of those components, we'll get into more detail, is ultimately recognizing that every program can be made even better over time, and that's going to be a component of the proposed management plan for this particular facility. So again, as this particular neighborhood has morphed, we've also recognized that some of the original intentions when the facility was built in '99 also needs to continue to morph. So in this particular case, what the management is looking to do is actually make this more of a family-oriented area that provides more introduction of golf to new golfers. And out of all that, I'm sorry, I'm getting off the task, but ultimately what that means is that we will be able to provide more resources to help manage the actions on this particular area, which in turn we found over time has been problematic. Golf balls have left the property. There's no secondary issue about that. What we want to do is figure out a way to basically improve the performance as far as golfers utilizing this facility. So with that, one of the challenges is there's 2 levels on this particular deck. The second deck is 12 feet below the bottom deck. And as soon as you put somebody 12 feet further up in the air, their golf ball is also going 12 feet higher up in the air. So for orientation purposes, this hedgerow kind of represents where the original netting currently continues to exist. And in this particular case, what we have found is that golf balls have found their way over that particular net. What also happens as far as topography is that the landform falls off in this direction. So if we were to move this net further to the west, we're also lowering that same net. So if we were to remove and replace, we actually create a situation that even has less resistance to those golf balls that are hit off in that particular easterly direction. So there's a 7-point plan that's part of the management approach for this particular property that seeks to essentially reorient the whole visual features and physical features within this particular hitting area. And what we're trying to do is, again, put the golfers' sights, thoughts, and directions in an area that is further away from residential homes. That all being the background, we also recognize that there are also people that don't follow the rules. We have created a game plan that has multiple signage. Granted, signs can be ignored, but at the same time, one of the features within each one of these hitting areas is actually the diffractor barrier. And as we rotate those, we actually also put signs right on that. So when you're hitting your golf ball, right-handed or left-handed, you're going to be seeing that same sign, those guidances every time. So it's a constant reminder of what the responsibilities of the golfers are here. And then lastly, as far as staffing, we also want to make sure that people are following the rules. So we are not only installing a new monitoring system as part of the proposal, but also increasing staffing. We just need to basically make sure that the bad apples that can create those particular situations that are adverse, that those are managed in a more aggressive way. So out of all that, there is that particular 7-point program that's within the application package. And what we always are trying to do is find solutions, find opportunities for improving the operations in a way that creates less conflict with this particular infill area. It does move it closer to the golf course, but we ultimately are trying to create a situation where golfers are relating with golfers as opposed to golfers relating with non-golfers. So that's a big picture in regards to orientation, how we are looking to basically refocus the operations within this particular area, and with that, create a new dynamic in regards to how golf balls are directed through this particular facility.
Thank you. Could you speak a little bit more about how you're actually reorienting people? Because the building's not moving, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So Matt. We do have details, so actually right on the top of that sheet. So what we've tried to do is identify in the dash lines, the existing orientation of those particular hitting mats. And what we're doing is reorienting not only the mat, but also those deflector areas or devices that are in between each one of those hitting areas. So we're basically physically taking the person that used to look this way and rotating them that way. It's a starting point as far as, again, getting that first initial direction of the golf ball coming out of off the club, headed in a better direction. There is also, on the next page, that kind of, the red arrows represent how we are looking to reorient, but again, the top right represents the detail, so you can see better those particular reorientation exercises. Here, on sheet C1.1, we've got those deflector barriers that are between each one of the hitting mats. And here we've superimposed one of the proposed signs on that particular deflector, essentially to create that visual. Every time somebody's there on the mat hitting a golf ball, that they're getting a reminder as far as what their responsibilities are. So that, in this particular case, one of the management approaches and one of the challenges that we've identified is that the left-hand golfer, the adverse shot that's most common for that particular type of golfer is the large slice. That's a description of how the golf ball flies through the air. But under those particular scenarios, especially when you're on the upper level, puts those golf balls closer and more readily towards the residential homes. So that being the background, we are, as part of the management program, is eliminating left-hand golfers from the use of that top plateau. We're again basically not trying to handicap this situation by putting somebody 12 feet higher up in the air that allows for those golf balls to go over barriers. And with that, they're relegated to the bottom there. And again, with the reorientation of those hitting pads, looking to basically refocus their direction as far as golf balls for this particular facility.
Okay. Has that higher platform always existed, or is that a more recent addition? It's always been there. Okay, thank you. DRB, any other questions here?
How tall is the existing fence that is on the screening that is on the other property that was subdivided off?
30 feet.
15, 18.
Yeah,
Make that clear. I'm sorry, what was that?
30 feet.
Okay.
Not exactly sure.
And what is the current distance to Mr. Wesco's house from the tee boxes?
Good question. We'll see if we can give you a better answer, if you give me a second.
Okay.
In the meantime, feel free to ask more questions.
Will you be moving the targets on the course as well? Because golfer's orientation in the box to the mat is irrelevant. They're going to hit towards the target.
They're all in that corridor.
Right. But there have been, some of those flags have been on the left-hand side of the current allotment. Could you guys, actually, this is something we'll talk about in deliberation.
Okay, no, ask away.
Okay. Would you guys be committed to making sure all of your target flags stay more towards the right side of the hitting area to discourage hitting towards the left side?
Yes.
Good question. Thank you.
To answer your questions, 150 yards.
Okay, 150 yards for those that may or may not play golf. You're talking about a high-powered wedge to a low iron. That's a common distance. That's not even drivers. I mean, your most dangerous, unpredictable shots will happen with your high irons, your twos,
Yep.
your threes.
That's good.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, so it is within range. We know that. And good question. So anything else from the board on this one? No. All right. Appellants, anything else you want to put out there?
No, the only thing that I would add is, the handout. We're not going to go into detail, but there's a transformation that's envisioned on Catamount, and that is to become a teaching facility for new to golf, and that's going to be the emphasis. So it's going to be kids, couples, just anybody, seniors, anybody that's new to golf, and teach clinics at the driving range, and then use the 3 holes that are existing as the practice what you've been working on in the clinics to put to use. And so the emphasis is going to be skewed towards that beginning golfer.
Thanks for that context, Pete. That is helpful. One other question just popped into my head for you all is, are your customers asked to self-report? Are they asked, or is that part of the plan that if, you hit a ball and it hits somebody's house, are they told they should go report that to staff? Or could that be part of the plan? Would that make sense? Okay. I think, you guys good?
Yeah.
All right, thank you for all of that. If you don't have anything else, then I will open it up to the public. Okay?
Okay.
Are there members of the public who would like to address the board, either in person or on Zoom? Please come on up and have a seat. You know the drill at this point.
Oh yeah, how we doing? I am Alex Wasco. Mr. Wasco is noted in some of the diagrams. I live at 1512. I also love 1512 Mountain View Road. I have some brief notes that I took just because I just barely saw the plan that was proposed right before this meeting. So I really appreciate that they submitted that plan, but that plan does not solve the safety issue. It does not propose new netting or expansion. It relies on signs, cameras, staff oversight, map orientation, and golfer compliance. That may reduce some potential misuse, but does not physically prevent hit golf balls from reaching my property. There are materials acknowledged that errant shots cannot be eliminated. Other than that, we talked about the boundary line. This does not, none of the plan has anything to do with that, and pretty much just please don't accept this as a corrective plan unless it's measurable, enforceable protection for neighboring properties. At a minimum, range operations should be restricted until the town has a survey-based plan and effective containment solution, not just signage and monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello?
Hi, my name is Tom Boyer, and I live in one of the townhouses. And I'd like to go back to the netting, the fence. And I talked to Emily, and hopefully you can back me up on this, but when that land was sold, the buyers were supposed to move it onto their property.
You got that in writing?
And
Do you have it in writing?
Was that?
Do you have it in writing?
Yeah, somewhere.
Well,
No, it's.
Go ahead.
We would need to see that in writing, or,
Yes.
or the town attorney would need to see it in writing.
We talked about that, and what was looked at in the permit record is the plan was shown that it was the dotted line. And then Matt's further research confirmed that there was no discussion of moving it. The dotted line showed it on the golf course property when all this time it's been in its existing location where the townhomes were proposed and that exist today.
Okay, I'll go back and look, but also.
Mr. Blair, I want to make one point, and if you have something like that and it is in writing, that is an agreement. That's an agreement between you and them, not you and the town. Or that the town is not involved. That's a contractual agreement between you. Okay.
Hopefully I can find it, but part of the selling of the property meant the removal of the.
Understood.
Yeah. So, also, back, Tomco used to have a driving range down on Williston Road. And when Maple Fields went in, they put up 90-foot fences. And what we're asking for is, visuals, okay, but you're all golfers. Visuals not gonna help when you got your driver out and you're wheeling away. And it got to the point where it was dangerous. In fact, my wife, it went right by her head. She heard it, didn't see it, heard it.
It whizzed through the sidewalk.
Yeah, and it hit the garage. The chief of police, Foley, who just retired, was over there, standing with us talking. Neighbor can attest to that. Didn't have a ball come right through the fence and dribbled down. It wasn't close, but he saw it. And if you go to any driving range, the fencing you'll see is, 90 feet up, usually curved, to keep the balls where they're supposed to be, not on our property, not aiming at our kids, our cars. And, it's unsettling to not be able to keep your car in your driveway because of balls coming up. And Alex and I have talked about this, the people that target you. I don't care how many visuals you put up, somebody's gonna wail away. Somebody, and somebody's eventually gonna get hurt.
So if I understand Mr. Boulanger correctly, the time period for compelling, from the town's perspective, for compelling the applicant to put up a fence is passed. Is that what I'm hearing?
In terms of enforcing, if you determined that relocating or installing a fence was a condition of approval of SUB 0705, I think the time to enforce that condition, to be able to enforce that condition, has passed.
Okay.
So you're telling me that the fence that's up there that we didn't put up, and the danger that it's created.
But you won't. It's on your property.
I won't argue that
Okay,
until I
all
find
right.
out, but that our safety is imperative. Our kids' safety, our property. You can take a look at all our garage doors and see
I'm
how.
not arguing that point with you. The board has a limited toolbox,
Okay. And-
to be able to pull
and so
from.
if we go with the site, this supposedly siting thing, what if it doesn't work?
You have a business disagreement with the business next door.
So basically, we're.
And we can get them for litter. Am I also getting that right?
You would need to file another complaint at that time if we were to proceed with this plan.
It's not a good situation, sir.
So let me shed a little light on that. This is an appeal of a particular violation letter that was issued that makes particular assertions under the bylaw about a situation that has occurred that has been complained about. WDB 18, the Williston Unified Development Bylaw chapter that governs nuisances and off-property impacts, is static unless it's amended by the select board. It still exists. It still says that properties generally may not have these certain unreasonable adverse impacts on neighboring properties. So there are two things in operation here. There's the law of the land as far as zoning is concerned, which has limits. It doesn't address everything. It's not meant to address everything. It's meant to address land use in a reasonable way and within the limits that Vermont law allows it to do so. But it does exist. A nuisance is a nuisance. Litter is litter. Property owners need to control the off-site impacts of activities on their property. That is true 10 years ago, yesterday, today, 10 years from now, as long as the bylaw is not amended by the select board. But in addressing this violation notice and this appeal, it's important to look at the history. And in addition to the zoning bylaw, the question for me in examining this and for Emily in writing the letter is, was there, in addition to what the bylaw requires, something that one of these prior development approvals required that didn't happen, was missed, or should be implemented or could be implemented today? So that's why we're talking about netting. That's why we're talking about 15 years. That's why we're talking about what did the DRB say about this when they reviewed SUB 0705. And the answer, unfortunately, was we just didn't find much. You know, if we found a condition of approval that said, move the netting, well, we would hope that then the zoning administrator would have enforced that prior to final plat, prior to building construction, prior to CO. We didn't find any of that. We found a line on a plan that had been carried forward from a prior site plan approval that didn't actually depict the netting as it had ever been installed, and that wasn't discussed as part of that development approval. So the bylaw is the bylaw. Those rules are much more steady and static. They don't expire. They apply to what happens out there tomorrow as much as they did to what happened there yesterday. But the conditions of approval eventually fade away if they're not implemented. And that was the finding on that they just weren't.
Are there any state regulations for driving ranges and netting or fencing?
There are all kinds of legal constructs outside of the zoning that is implemented by the town of Williston. I can't walk up to you and throw a golf ball at your head. That's assault, right? And battery if I hit you. And it's also not a zoning violation, right? It's a civil violation, it's a criminal violation. So important to remember that when the DRB is doing its work here, it's enforcing the zoning of the town of Williston and the conditions of approval of developments that were issued thereunder. That's all the DRB is empowered to do here. So nothing we do here tonight as a staff or a DRB says anything about civil actions, says anything about small claims court, says anything about injury claims or insurance or anything like all of those other things that exist out in the universe that might pertain to this situation. But what we do have is a bylaw with a chapter that says, don't create undue hazards and nuisances off property. And that's the part of the violation I'd be focused on is the violation identified there's an off-property impact happening. The violation letter said, this is beyond what's allowed in zoning. The appellant has submitted a plan to you to try to rectify that. The question for the board is, are you interested in modifying that violation letter to require the appellant to do that plan, do nothing at all, do something other than that plan? So back to netting where we started, and like I said, it's more than I've talked about netting in a long time. Probably you can't hang your hat on that old condition of approval, but you can say to the appellant, we think the thing you need to do if you're going to keep operating a driving range here is to enclose this thing in netting. If the appellant feels that's a condition they can't live with, they have an avenue of appeal to the state environmental court. If you say to the appellant, we're just going to overturn the violation, we don't even think you broke the rules of zoning, we don't think you need to do anything, the neighbors have an avenue of appeal to the state environmental court. That's the system that we're working in. So it's important that the DRB look at this carefully, look at the bylaw carefully, look at what the appellant's proposing carefully, listen to what the neighbors have to say carefully, render the best decision you can, but none of this precludes any of those other things happening under the law.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
And can I ask one more question about, does the driving range have to have netting or fence of some sort?
There's no requirement in Williston zoning specifically that a driving range have netting.
And that's why our hands are a bit tied.
Yeah. But
So-
I like the fact that, that you mentioned the danger part of it, and the nuisance part of it, and the littering part of it.
Right. So there
is something,
We are here, we're looking at an appeal of a specific zoning violation, and how we were able to address that may be one step in this process. But we hear you that it is not safe, and I think the three gentlemen here also hear you that it is not safe. How we get you to that safe place, you may not get the full answer tonight, but everyone here wants you to get there, and we do hear you.
Okay.
We appreciate that.
All right, I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Go ahead, Pete.
Staff, would you mind
What's that?
bringing up?
Doug, Go ahead. Go ahead and have a seat. You'll go next. Just let's let Pete comment. No, go ahead.
Would you mind bringing up Exhibit E, please, as part of the package? And Exhibit E, if DRB members didn't get to that point in the considerable package, it's a warranty deed that is tied to the condo dwellings. And so that's now exhibited on the screen. And in short, it says that the association and all owners and occupants in the townhouses at Catamount assume the risk of damage or inconvenience caused by the result of golf balls accidentally entering the common elements or units from the adjacent lands of the grantor, which is Catamount Golf, its successor and assigns.
Okay, thank you, Pete. I don't believe that while it is relevant to the relationship between the applicant and the townhomes, it is not necessarily relevant to what we're talking about right now. With that, I would like to give you the floor. Could you please state your name and address?
My name is Esther McGuire. I live at 1450 Mountain View Road. Just to hit on that, accidental.
Address the board, please. All right, thank you.
Accidental is accidental. We've had golf balls accidentally come through. There's no netting, but come through the cedar hedge, and they plop. Those are accidental, errant balls. When golf balls fly through and over the net and into your yard and into your house and whiz by your head, land behind children, those are targeted, non-accidental balls. There are some people out there that just are having fun or are belligerent. I can't put a judgment on them, but it's happening. The Catamount has done what they could with their signage. They put up cameras that didn't work, but they were made to look like they were working. We would call over when balls were flying through, and someone would go upstairs and say, hey, balls are flying through, settle down. That's a lot of policing, and it worked. We have a problem. And I don't want to normalize this, and it feels that way to me right now. That's the way it's feeling. So that's all I have to say. I'm feeling like that's it. Thank you.
Well, that's important. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board? Please come on up, state your name, and address for the record.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Lenny Singh. I live at 1448 Mountain View, which is the first property close to our driveway, which is an easement that enables us to access our homes. So thank you for that. I live there with my wife. We're a young couple. We moved back to Vermont, after leaving for 10 years. We're part of that young cohort that you need to keep the community vibrant, right? I wish that as a golfer, someone that played competitive golf growing up here, that you could have just handled this over here, right? And I also appreciate that you've done quite a bit, Alex and the golf course have done quite a bit from the concept of policing. I've had it happen where a ball's come over, I've been a little livid, I've walked over, I've presented the evidence, and very quickly a gentleman has gone up and said, hey, you can't be hitting balls like that, right? But there's also, in the concept of urban planning and in the concept of the development of space, defensible space. You have the ability to look at space and look how it is evolving and changing over time and adapt that space to the current problems we deal with today. Looking at the past discussions, looking at a conversation with an amendment that goes between a developer that wants to put houses and a business that exists, that's fine. I have zero interest in impacting the business. I think it's beautiful to live next to a golf course. It's beautiful to have that open air and hear people chuckling when they're out there. But I also know that all 4 of our properties and our neighbors, the 5th, have a tremendous amount of damage. We've had vehicles hit. We have young children in the fourth home that have a little house outside that sometimes when Willow, 6 years old, is playing, so she'll come out and be like, ooh, I found a golf ball. That's not fair, right? That's not fair to the community, that's not fair to all of us, and that's not fair to Alex. Alex is a business order. If something happens, you're fundamentally gonna have the liability on you at the end of the day if something really does go wrong. And so I appreciate the fact that there's a 7-point plan. I also think as a golfer that we need to shut down the top of the space that's 12 foot up because the fence really isn't a fence. And you have to redirect all of the items in that particular direction. Or we need to look at, hey, if we have this new development coming up with a tremendous number of homes, maybe there's a different place that the golf course, the driving range can be put. Maybe it can turn into a wedge green, right, instead of a driving range. Maybe we limit the type of clubs that are there. I'll reiterate, I don't want to be here. I don't think it's a good use of time to have conversations with mediators or boards or governance. And we really appreciate your time. We appreciate Chief Foley's time for coming and checking it out. And we appreciate the willingness to have a conversation to get to a better place so that we can live in this home for a long time. Because as a young person, if we get to the stage of having kids, and golf balls keep coming over, I may want to switch. And that's not an ideal way, right? You don't want to take taxpayers out of your property. So with that, Alex, just thanks for being here. Thanks for being here in the evening, to all of you. And as a golfer, let's just solve this so we can move on. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public, in person or online?
There's one attendee online. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand or comment in the chat.
Members of the board, any other questions? Anything else you guys would like to offer up before we close this one out? All right, well, with that, I will close this hearing at 9:06 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Board is going to move into training at this point. Does that training as the next agenda item make sense to everyone at this point, or would we prefer to do that another way? What do you think, Scott? I mean, it makes sense because the training needs to be televised, right?
Oh, it's just open hearing, I guess. It doesn't make much difference to me.
Let's do the training then.
Okay, so, well, you also have the organizational meeting to do chair and vice chair. Do you want to do that first or do that at the end of the meeting?
Let's do the training and then we'll
Okay.
take care of that at the end.
So I just put on the board training, open space and making motions. So a couple meetings ago, folks asked about comparing and contrasting the different open space standards throughout the zoning districts. And then Nate suggested everybody taking turns practicing making a motion, chair responsibilities of practicing opening and closing a hearing, so we can take some time to do that. In terms of open space standards, I'm going to do a super quick high level. You can always deep dive into the chapters on it. I'm going to pull up our zoning district map. So the green part of the town is the agricultural rural residential zoning district. This is most everything south of Interstate 89, and then a lot of land north of Mountain View Road and off of French Hill area. So in the agricultural rural residential zoning district, there is that requirement that a parcel 10.5 acres or greater sets aside 75% of the land as open space. For many years, that open space set aside was just a building envelope designation. Currently in our bylaw, and for the past couple of years, it's required to be its own separate lot. So its own parcel that shows up as its own parcel on this map viewer and is distinct on a subdivision plat. And then there's parameters for that open space. We've gone over it in some of those recent subdivisions about wetlands, watershed buffers, steep slopes. Those would need to be in the open space. The yellow part of the town is the residential zoning district. So there is a open space requirement there, but there's no quantitative minimum. So it does not have that 75% requirement that the ag rural district has. And it has those same parameters about what kinds of lands should or must be in that open space, like wetlands, steep slopes. And it's a little bit more flexible on viewshed impacts. It's in the sewer service area, so we anticipate development here. So farmlands of local importance are also deprioritized because the intention of the yellow part of town in the residential district is that there will be suburban but pedestrian-friendly oriented subdivision development. The blue parts, or excuse me, the purple parts of town are industrial east up off of Redmond Road, and then industrial west, industrial Ave, Marshall Ave, most of Marshall Ave, Commerce Street. Those parts of town do not have an open space requirement, nor do the Gateway District. So Gateway Zoning District South off of Exit 12, Hurricane Lane, the Park and Ride. There's some hillside development standards there, but there's not an open space designation requirement there. Mixed use commercial, basically Home Depot, Walmart area, on that southern Harvest Lane loop, no open space requirement either. And those other gateway areas besides Gateway South, we have Gateway West, near the intersection of Williston Road and Brownell Road, so the O'Brien's Corner Store, and Gateway North, so James Brown Drive, which is sort of like an industrial district. Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Good call.
Makes it easier. Also, the Midway Residential Zoning District, essentially where the annex is, there's not a quantitative open space requirement. There are some design requirements that there be parks, both for public and private use, but not an open space set aside in the same way that we have in the ag rural or the residential zoning district. Form-based code was adopted in 2022. That's the area in red with all the streets overlaid on it. And form-based code has the required private open area. You guys, as the DRB, don't get to administer form-based code, but I think it's still important to understand some of its requirements. The private open area can be a certain percentage of residential balconies. It can be on the roof of the building. It needs to be set back, so it can't be within the front yard or the parking setback area. And there's some other design parameters about where private open area can be, how it's calculated on any given parcel. The reason I mentioned form-based code before I go to the village is the form-based code private open area standard inspired the standard for the village zoning district, where there's the private open area that we discussed tonight. And the bylaw for the village requires that there be 15% of the lot for the use and enjoyment. Things within the setbacks can't be there. So comparing and contrasting the ag rural district, the village zoning district, and form-based code all have a quantitative requirement for private open area, but they serve fundamentally different purposes and they are fundamentally different scales. So we're not doing open space set-asides in Taft's Corners like we're doing them on a 200-acre forested subdivision. Those are some of the key high points and key differences between the various zoning districts. Are there any questions?
Oh, actually, yeah, I do have one, just because it's coming up with the property across the street. Do any of the zones have differences about continuous open space?
Yes, so in the ag rural zoning district and the residential zoning district, there are some contiguity standards for how open space wraps around house lots and where house lots are created. Form-based code, it can be in no more than 2 areas and then all the balconies. So if you have an apartment building, you can calculate a certain number of balconies and then no more than 2 other places, whether they're green space on the ground or rooftop patio, that kind of thing.
Okay.
The bylaw is clear in the ag rural district that open space is a singular lot. There was a case study a couple of years ago where an applicant experimented and tried to do multiple open space lots, and the DRB declined to move forward on that and said it's got to be one open space lot. So that's one of those ag rural standards.
Yes, the language is quite a bit different versus the VZD. It actually says contiguous, right?
Yeah. And in ag rural, there's actually a requirement that if there's off-property conserved open space, that the new open space be contiguous to that as well. So, there's an attempt in the rural part of town to create corridors of open space, and they often align with mapped wildlife travel corridors, core wildlife habitat. So there's a really strong natural resource impulse behind the open space requirements in ag rural, whereas in the village and the form-based code district, you're really talking about space for the people who are going to live in these more dense infill type developments that the bylaw encourages.
More questions?
No, I think most of my remaining questions would be about planning and future zoning, which I don't think is in this conversation.
Well, I think that this is a good time to bring up too. This is something I did not do a lot when I was first on the board. Still should probably do more. But if you're going through these packets that they put together and it references a bylaw or something like that, and you have a question, it's totally okay to email the town staff. You probably should not reply all with a question about a specific, and even in the language in an email, you shouldn't reference a specific, hearing. But to ask a general question about bylaws, or if you're not sure, then you pick up the phone and call them. If you're not sure how to ask it, but that
we're happy to do that.
Definitely, yeah. And I think this is the appropriate forum to talk a little bit about how the bylaw is amended, if there's anything that could be amended, because it's not good to talk about amending the bylaw during an active public hearing for an application on the table. So yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about that, we can.
Yeah, that's exactly and we don't need to go through one by one making motions. I just was hoping to get a little bit conversational with everyone so the questions can come out, and maybe that's a good thing to start talking about if you want to go through that, Emily.
Yeah, and I've said this before, and I think you guys, most of you have heard me say this, and that is that we're here to uphold the bylaw. We're here to test compliance. Ultimately, the staff does that for us, right? And they present us with a staff package telling us why or why not this works. But that's our job, right? Our job is not to write policy. Our job is not to create new policy. Our job is to simply test compliance, and if it complies, they get it. And we've had people on the board who have gotten here thinking they're going to change the world. That's not what this board is. That's the planning commission. You go there to write new policy. You come here to just simply uphold the policy. And not everybody likes it. And tonight was a good case of that, in part because some of what they're asking for is not within our ability to, give it to them.
That's civil redress.
It can be tough, but if we do just follow the bylaws, it does keep us out of trouble.
Right.
I mean,
If you don't follow the bylaws,
You get-
they go to e-court, you get overturned. And that costs the town a lot of money, that costs people a lot of money, and so forth and so on. So it's our job is to get it, try to get it right,
And
even if you don't like it.
Our goal, and if the bylaw was 100% clear in how to apply it to every single situation, we wouldn't need a DRB, right?
Right.
So what we really rely
much the same way why form-based code works.
Right.
Because we're not involved with that.
Right. So we try, believe me, trying to write something that doesn't have to be interpreted. That's why it's 172 pages long.
Right.
The DRB provides a really critical role in the town in terms of here's what the bylaw wants, here's what this particular piece of property, right, and they're all different, and this particular development, they're all different, wants to achieve. Is there a condition we can draft that's enforceable, that works, that operationalizes this bylaw over here on this particular site and plan? And that's what we really rely on the board for, is to, we draft those if we think we can, but it needs to be in the hands and minds of the appointed citizens of the town to make those decisions. You remember, you've talked about this in your trainings before, you're quasi-judicial. It's like a court, you're like a judge. You're making that decision. So we do our best to make sure that decision is informed.
And you guys do a great job of it.
I think they do.
Can we just run through how you put these together quickly for everyone? Things that were not obvious to me in the beginning, that probably are obvious to everyone here, but like the DP 2602, we still use DP even if something's in pre-app. We still use that DP acronym designation. So don't just glance at that quickly. Make sure you know whether it's pre-app or not. And then other things that I didn't really realize at first, because I was just listening while you guys were running the show, really, is like, the staff puts a lot of effort into making these reports easy for us to quickly reference. Like you've noticed things that are in bold and emotions and things like that. So I found that sometimes even highlighting.
Right, I mean, if you got a paragraph, and it says complies next to it, you don't need to dig too deep.
No, I love tables that are literally, does this comply?
Right.
No, yes, no.
Right, so skip over it.
Yeah.
Right, you can read it, but move on to something else that doesn't comply, or that has an expected compliance, but why is it expected? What happened? So.
The other thing about that, we went through a big exercise of redesigning these staff reports. I don't know, it's probably like 5 years ago now.
It's a COVID project.
We really tried to get the shortest version possible on the front page. So we know everybody's got a really busy life. We know that it's a huge package of information. On that front page, we try to give you what kind of hearing is it? Is it a pre-application? Is it a discretionary permit? Is it something else? A visual reference, the best picture we think there is in the package, the checklist of applicable bylaw sections and things to look at.
It's unchecked here.
Well,
History.
We try to give you a really brief description of where is this in terms of the zoning map, what else applies to it, and what are we recommending the board does with it tonight, so that you don't have to go 10 pages in and go, wow, this thing is half-baked, we're going to have to continue this. Hopefully staff's already picked up on that. We've already said,
this is happening.
This should be continued. We need you to hold the hearing tonight. It's a good night to take testimony. The hearing should not close tonight. So we've tried to pregame all of that for you. We also try to have conversations with the chair or whoever is going to be chairing the meeting about that when it's coming up, so that it's not a surprise. Usually the applicant also, they have access to that report on Thursday or Friday when we post it. They know it's not a surprise either. The goal is everybody's got full information, but you want to open that packet up and just look at all those front pages initially, and then you think about what you want to dig deeper into. But we really wanted to get that information for you up front.
Usually the length of this
that is
paragraph is a telltale for how many
Shorter
bullet
that
things
is the
you'll
better.
find. And the intention is really that, a DRB member or an applicant who has been through years of development review can navigate it relatively quickly. But also, if you're in a butter and this is your first time ever interfacing with the bylaw, you can follow the tree of all of the bylaw chapters and their applicability and hope, hey, it says complies as proposed for this landscape standard. I don't understand it, but it cites the bylaw and I can go find that. So we really try to, create an easy roadmap that no matter where you are in the development review process, you can pick up the information relatively quickly. And it's always under evolution. So if you have particular suggestions, like maybe our toner needs to be updated because some of the light stuff looks particularly light tonight, let us know.
Cool. And all right, so pre-app is a very common one that we get, like we had tonight. And then do they have a year before they need to, what is the rule?
Yeah, they have a year from the notice of decision. So say tonight you approve your list of recommendations as amended. At the next meeting, you'll approve the minutes, and then a couple days after that, we get a notice of decision letter out. So for this particular application, it would probably be the end of August when that notice of decision letter would go out. They would have 1 year from that date to file a discretionary permit. And also, from the date of that notice of decision letter is the 30-day appeal period to state court. And that appeal deadline is the same for pre-application as it is for discretionary permit. In terms of the discretionary permit decision, you have 1 year to file final plans plus up to a year of extensions and 2 6-month extensions. So if your 1 year expires with your pre-app, no more extensions, you have to file a new pre-app. If you're 1 year at filing your final plans from discretionary permit approval, you could get a 6-month extension or a 6-month extension.
So then we get to discretionary permit. When you review a discretionary permit application and you're writing your staff report, how closely do you hold the pre-app guidance conditions? How binding is pre-app when you're writing your staff report? And if you're writing your staff report, do you call out any changes from pre-app and why?
Yeah, so discretionary permit staff reports will usually have a side-by-side table where we include the left side column. Here's all the things you said at pre-app in your recommendation, and here's some staff notes on how the applicant did or didn't address those comments. So a lot of it's complies as proposed. They showed their landscape buffer. They met public works comments from water, sewer. But sometimes there might be a discussion like, hey, they still forgot the bicycle parking. I still don't see bicycle parking. So we do include that recitation of the pre-app recommendations in that main staff report. And when I get a discretionary permit application and that started with a pre-app, the first thing I'm doing is reading those recommendations and looking at what the applicant said in response to them and showed in their plans. And like, did they do it or did they not? And does it need to carry forward as a condition of approval?
Cool. So let's say we approve a discretionary permit at a hearing. Sometimes we will retain final plan review. Can you talk about what that is? Did I get that right?
Yes, so final plans is the last step before administrative permits. It's basically responding to the conditions of approval. So say the condition of approval is you need to have 5 bicycle racks because right now your plan only shows 2 and our calculations say you need 5. The applicant's final plan set would then show those 5 bicycle racks on it. Most of the time it's staff review of those final plans. So did you address all of the DRB conditions of approval in your site plan? And then it's also looking for things like development agreement, those association covenants and bylaws, those tend to get firmed up at that point in time as well. Sometimes the DRB retains final plans review. There's no bylaw standard as to when or why, but the general principle is like a very major subdivision with a lot of units going in, a major development would retain final plans review, or if it was...
I would add too, is if the board doesn't trust the applicant. I mean, right?
Yeah, and that's usually when a lot of things went from a pre-app recommendation, still weren't met at DP, or a DP condition of approval, and the DP has 5 to 10 specific conditions of approval of things the plans still need to do. And that can be various scales.
Or if somebody on the board has a specific desire to watch something that's going on in the permit process, you can request to have it to be approved by the board. I mean, it's not a requirement that it has to go to staff. It's easier if it goes to staff. It's one less thing the board has to do, but if you want to see something to come back to you to make sure, that it gets done, yeah, the board can agree to that.
It's probably a nice thing in some of these for you to be able to tell the applicant, this one has to go back to the DRB, we better get it all right.
Yeah, and Final plans review is not a warned public hearing, so we don't send the abutters letters, we don't have to do it 15 days, so the lead time on when we get that on a DRB agenda can really vary. If it's something major, and I get the final plans on a Thursday, it's probably not going on that following Tuesday, but if there's enough lead time, it can usually go on that next upcoming DRB agenda.
Thank you. I just wanted to go over the basics real quick. So I think that's plenty of staff training for the night, unless there's anything else anybody wants to get after. Okay.
Some key differences between pre-app and DP. So if the first page accidentally got ripped off, throughout the document, it would say it would be referring to conditions of approval or findings of fact. And at the very end, pre-application has a list of recommendations. Discretionary permit is findings, conclusions, and then the conditions of approval. And the motion for a discretionary permit is a little bit lengthier. It includes that second clause about you must file final plans that proceed in strict conformance, yada yada.
Okay. Well, we've all seen an appeal now. You've seen the certificates. I don't think there's much else. We'll see an election tonight.
Oh, you want to do that now?
Scott, are you willing to do it again?
Yes. I will say that this will be my last year on the board. So I'll extend through this next July, but then I'm going to
Request denied.
I make a motion to staff that request is denied. Curtis seconds.
See if you ever get another development approval in this town.
Yeah. I can either tell you that now or tell you that in a year, but I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So a year from today is what you're saying?
A year from when my appointment expires, which is next July.
I guess you can now set the expectation there. That's the minimum notice. All right, and I'm willing to continue this for another year anyway as well, if everyone will have me.
Or if anybody else wants to do it.
Exactly.
It's an open.
Yeah, I'm not trying to box.
Yeah, no, I'm not jumping deep end quite yet.
If there's interest, speak up, or forever hold your peace.
For at least for 12 months.
Exactly.
So all in favor of nominating Nate as chair for the coming year?
Aye.
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 Nays?
Vote on that?
You can vote for yourself, sure.
Aye.
5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Okay.
Vice chair?
Can we get a motion for vice chair?
Yeah.
Do we need to have seconds on these? Does it matter? You can, but you don't need to.
Whatever.
Is it the same with a certificate of appropriateness? You don't really need them?
Yeah, it's sort of like squishy.
It's
Okay.
squishy.
If you want to be super formal with Robert's rules, you can. If you want to just do it by consensus.
All right, well, I'll move to nominate Scott again for vice chair for another long 12 months.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays? 0. 5 ayes, no nays, motion approved.
Great.
Okay?
Close deliberations?
Yeah, let's move into closed deliberations. July 28th, it is 10:29 PM and the DRB is back in session. Is there a motion for DP 26-02.1 7997 Williston Road in the VZD?
I make the motion?
Thank you, Dylan. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, as authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Dylan Hornibrook, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory board required to comment on this application by Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of July 28, 2026, accept the recommendations for DP-02.1 and authorize this application to move forward to discretionary permit review with the following should be my verb choice here? With the following selections to recommendations in motion? Okay. For In section 1, we believe that they can meet the development review standards by the WDB. In 1D1, private open area can be in multiple areas. For 1D3, the strip alongside the two parallel, 1D2, a fence screening area from Williston Road is not required. In 1D3, the 5-foot by 44-foot strip alongside the two parallel parking spots cannot count as private open area. Moving to 2D, we have amended the statement to the driveway should be a minimum of 20 feet wide at the curb cut onto Williston Road, then taper to 16 feet wide when driveway enters the wooded portion of the 25-foot easement, with 4 foot clear in the wooded, forested, or brushy areas. Moving to E2, the 7 counted parking spaces, including 5 surface parking spaces, are sufficient. Moving to E3, the parking lot and access aisle layout does meet the intent of the WDB. Moving to 2G, WDB 16, the single snow storage area is not adequate for the proposed development of WDB 6.6.2. And finally, 3B, Williston Fire Department memo dated September 6, 2025 and July 24th, 2026.
Oh wait, that should say July 28th.
July 28th, 2026. The applicant is encouraged to communicate with the fire department regarding the recommendations and potential action of the fire department may take if their recommendations are not followed.
Thank you, Dylan. And there was a second earlier. Can I have to hear that second again?
I second it.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any discussion? All right, with that, we'll take a roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Scott Riley.
Yay.
Jim Brizzolera.
Yay.
Brian Curtis.
Yay.
Dylan Hornerbrook.
Yay.
5 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Do we have a motion for APP 26-02, 1400 Mountain View Road in the RZD?
So moved. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Brian Curtis, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having...
Oops, sorry, wrong one. Let's get the, it starts out the same, let's get the appeal one. Or it starts out different because it's the appeal, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. As authorized by WDB 5.4.6, I, Brian Curtis, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the appeal of the administrator's decision, all of the accompanying materials, and have heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of July 28, 2026, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law as modified by the DRB for APP 26-02. An appeal of notice of zoning violation, second follow-up letter, and modify the decision of the administrator as follows. By Friday, August 28, 2026, 1, make the changes to the driving range enumerated in the letter and site plan submitted to planning and zoning on July 20th, 2026. The approved findings of fact, and I'm reading all these, right?
Right, as written.
As written. And the conclusion of law, per WDB 5.4 and 24 BSA 4465, the DRB determines that the administrator's decision is not or is?
I guess is not right, Matt.
is not consistent with the specific provision.
Correct, because then you're modifying.
Because you're modifying
Yep.
it, right? Of the WDB and modifies that decision. 2, WDB 18.2.2 governs dangerous buildings and enumerates 7 physical condition criteria. None of those criteria directly address golf balls or other off-site impacts from an outdoor recreational use. The DRB finds that WDB 18.2.2 does not pertain to golf balls being hit from a driving range onto an adjoining property. 3, if the DRB selects, does not in conclusion number 2 above, the DRB finds that WDB 18.1.1, the basic requirement of this bylaw, is that no development should present a hazard or constitute a nuisance for the occupants adjoining lands. And the requirements of WDB 18.8.2 and 18.12 intended to prevent the litter from being blown off-site are applicable to this situation and operational changes as proposed in the July 20th, 2026 corrective action plan. It may be required under these provisions. The July 20th, 2026 submission satisfies the procedural deadline set by the second follow-up letter. The operational management plan that does not modify netting isn't acceptable as a resolution of the notice of zoning violation. It is acceptable.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Scott. Is there any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Scott Riley?
Yay.
Jim Brizzolera?
Yay.
Brian Curtis?
Yay.
Dylan Hornibrook?
Yay.
5 yeas, no nays, motion carries. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from July 14th?
I make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, 5 in favor, none opposed. Is there a motion? Sorry, what was that?
You do want to get a second.
Oh, second on the minutes? I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Thank you, Scott. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott.
Second.
Closing this meeting at 10:38. Thanks, Dylan.